This second part is about Grundtvig as the mythologist, the one who is talking about the original stories of a people. Mythology seems at odds with Christian faith and the monotheism as a whole, because he's a Christian priest and he believes in the creation of Adam and Eve by God. So, how does he come to talk about mythology? He published actually a book about it in 1832 called The Nordic Mythology, or Pictures of the Mind, picture language of the mind. But a lot earlier than that, in 1808, he was very occupied with this idea of the origin of the Nordic people and where they came from. And so he is very much looking in the direction of Odin and Thor, his sons, and Balder and Furnace Wolf, Ragnarok, all these old sagas that had been gathered from the Icelandic Edda and Saga. And also he found sources to it in the English mythology, the story of Beowulf. And he just went on really relating to that and trying to dig into it to understand this original idea that was in it. And finally, he found that he was a little bit at odds with this, because he was so passionate about the Nordic mythology at that time and saw that romanticism in it, like fulfilling the golden age of a people and getting them back on the track of becoming those they really want to be. And one of the basic poems that took part and hold on him was the Volsrufba. It's the Völvens Spådom. It's like the story of Völva. That she's a lady from the old Nordic mythology. She's a witch of a kind who's telling the story of the creation from the beginning. It's meant to be a story from Iceland, and one can see some kind of traits of monotheism in it, especially maybe the Christian faith, but you can say generally the story of something that's been created, and then there will be a lot of incidents and things that happens, and then you get Ragnarok, the day of judgment, or where everything disappears and goes away, and then there will be a new world. And so this cycle is very much alike the biblical cycle, the cycle of the monotheistic faith. You find it also in Islam. And so Grundtvig has, in his way of looking at this mythology, a little bit of double shyness in it. He's, at one hand, very passionate about it because he could see this is the historic roots of his people and the people from the Nordic countries. And he says that. He says this is the roots of each people has these roots, the mythology. They are pictures of the language you use and you have in the mind that makes that people show its special character. So for him, he say here in a quote, each people has its mythology, or the playing of gods, that shows us with certainty the highest thoughts. People has human life, that's their life, but in their thoughts they have the gods they wanna worship and strive to get to. And so in that way he is in a way trying to combine these old stories that does not fit with his Christian faith and monotheistic views with the idea of the mythology as a basis for what he want to get to. And so later he really revised that picture of himself again, and he goes studying this with a spirit that is Christian and saying, well, I'm studying this to understand our roots, not as an explanation for my salvation and not to get to believe in these stories, but just to try to understand better what roots we have in us. And he says that in several places, especially in Nordic mythology, he defends that thought, saying, it is neither religion or the message about the creation of the world I wanna learn and lead out of these hidden myths. It is the people's head ideas, the ideas of the people in the human life, and that is related to what for me seems to be tracking and enlightening that light that every people must cast on their history to get the full spiritual picture in the mind from which we can win. Complicated ways he says things, and my translation doesn't make it better, but it's his way of writing. He is a little complicated in the way he writes. It's all Danish and it's also complicated, so you have to turn your head around sometimes to try to get to the sentences as he's trying to explain them. But once you get hold of it and you break the key to reading his way of writing, it becomes fun, because then you can really understand and wait for the meaning to reveal itself through several pages maybe. Anyhow, well, the mythology goes from being that passion he wanted to study in his youth and then goes back from it. And so, what is it he's studying in the Nordic mythology? He wants to look at that old teaching of the Odin and the Asa and Yeter. These two people had a great focus for him in his writings, because it is for him to see the first two creations that the eternal God, the Al-Father, he created these Asers so they could fight against the untamed material and in its roots called the Yeter. So the Acer is like kind of beings of light or being of goodness that's gonna be created and has been now created according to this Asalera in the Vulvens Spodam, the story from that old lady, the witch. She's telling the story of the beginning. She said the Al-Father has created these Asers, and that's because they need to fight this Yeter. The Yeter, they are from the dark material, and so they are there to put them under control or to try to like bring the light to them in some way. But these Asers, they go and indulge in the sins and wrongdoings together with these Yeters, so they, in a way, get into a pact, and that's against what the Al-Father wants. So he creates the norns that will decide the destiny, and these norns are different from both the Acers and the Yeters. So these both parts can fight and in the end like extinguish each other in Ragnarok. So everybody will vanish in the end. And so after that there will be an eternal, harmonic and sin-free world that will emerge from that. So it's like a kind of dialectic movement he's going through here, where we have something that's good opposed by something that's bad, and that brings forward the higher spirit, and then God's in his highness will decide, and then things will go the way that the Al-Father or the God wants it to. We see the traces of the mythology and the monotheistic religion going side by side here, not totally in this harmony, but not either the same story as it should be. That's why he tried to explain later that he's looking into these roots to understand and not to take it as a way of life for himself. And that's a big difference. In the beginning, he really says that these Asa teachings, the teachings of these Asas that comes to earth with some kind of light, they are important. And he want to really understand their relation to the Nordic people and their way of life, and how they got indulged in the material in a way that makes them corrupt and strafe away from the way of the God that as the God wants it, the Al-Father. And so he can see they are from a kind of spiritual world that is harmonic and has this message of light and goodness in them. But then, because this Ymer, as he's called, the father to these Yeter, this people of the material who are creating themselves independently of the Al-Father, they are like going rogue and going outside of the order, and thereby also seducing and luring these creations of light, the Acers, into their own world, into the material, so they forget their origins, and so they sink into that material in many ways, and they go sinning and doing things against the will of the God and the Al-Father, and well, the fights will erupt, and it will stay as a conflict and a fight until the Al-Father in the end sends these creatures that will destroy everything and put things in balance and harmony again, as a big drama unfolding in that way. And in that way, as he's talking in the Nordic mythology, well, the secret of the creation and the life has been solved for him. That's what he writes in 1808, when he's speaking about this very interesting and central story in the Asa teachings. And there are people today who believe and commit to that teaching. He did so in the beginning. He was very passionate about it and say it's part of my spirit. But then he revised and he could see that it was like explaining um, things more clearly to him, and putting also Christianity and the fight between good and evil, the spirit of the humans against the material of the body, putting it all in a clearer light. That's why he likes it, and he's going with it as a kind of explanation that makes sense for him. But so he says now the secret of the being has been solved, and these forces will destroy each other in the end by the wisdom and power of the Al Father, the the father of everything, the God behind it all. And in that way, it will create that void, the new harmony that will be created afterwards behind that. So from this excerpt of his works, that's also been a central part of the book of Anas Holm, which I'm basing this retelling on. A very fine book, by the way, that should be read and obtained. Um, Take you in some depth, but does not really leave you in the jungle, and does not also let you just scratch the surface. Goes a little bit beyond the surface and gives you a sense of the original text, the way he's writing his poems as well. Another side of Grundtvig that's worth to mention here also is that he took from that old Nordic mythology and stories that kind of historic, heroic bravery that was important for him to bring to light and to awaken again in the spirit of the people. And so he go looking for these stories as well, and he finds one that really calls him out to make a great poem. That was in 1817, where he called it Awaken, Awaken, Danish Heroes. And the poem itself is the the bells of Bjarke's voice, or Bjarke's shout. And what is that story actually? Bjarke Målets Efterklang, it's called. Well, it's a kind of text fragments from the old writer called Saxo, who wrote about the Denmark's history, and he tries to combine it in a poem that makes sense, focusing on the heroic side of it, of the honor, the bravery, the standing together, getting back at those bad people who had done wrong, and getting the victory in the end. It's that kind of focus that he has, that spirit of the people that should be awakened in that heroism and big spirit that they should have in them and bring out to the people and in life as well. And so let's just look back at this story, what it's all about, to understand the poem as he's trying to write it. The story is based on fragments in the story told by Saxo about Denmark, and it's based on the old Nordic poem that has been found called Bjarkemålet. And the story is basically about the Danish king, Rolf Krake, who was the king over a place called Lyra. It's a place in Sjælland, not far from Copenhagen. And from Roskilde. He was a guest in the Swedish court, in the king called Hjartvar. And it's because Hjartvar's wife, Skuld, was half sister to Rolf. So she invited him and his warriors and people to a kind of dining and get together, family get together. But that king, Hjartvar, had evil in mind, and he had plans to get rid of that king and his warriors once they have really settled down. And so after the party, they settled down and had a lot to drink and went to sleep. But this king Hjartvar had hidden some soldiers in some boats, so they went out and attacked the Danish ships to rob them. And he and his men left the castle, closed the doors, and set fire on it. So the place where the Danish king Ralph Krake was sleeping became like a kind of a death place for them. They were going to burn to death. And so they did. Most of them, they really died. And those who were left, they fought heroically, but well, they fell. And they lost the battle because of that betrayal. They were very much entrusting to this king and his wife, but then he betrayed them, Hjartvar. And so they all died just one or two survived. One is called Vigga, who went home and later devised a plan to come back and kill Yartvar and take the revenge for the fallen king and his soldiers. And so this is what his poem is about. He's trying to put us back in that scene and see it from the perspective of these fallen heroes and those who are left behind, who had fought bravely, and so this is what he's going to speak about in that beautiful poem, in my idea. And to get a sense of the poem, he is really starting with talking about the nature, and that's how these romantic poems always used to combine nature with history and culture and the time now you're in. And so he say the sun is up above the hills of the top of the woods on the top, and everything is glinting like the roof of Gimle. Gimle, it's the place of heaven in the old Nordic mythology. And so he said there is a messenger coming to us, giving us message about the clear day. Awaken, awaken, Danish heroes. Spring up and tighten your belts, because now is the day for doing of the fighting. And so this is now, we are already in the scene. You can imagine that by reading that poem. It's a very beautiful, touching poem. I translated it into Arabic and it became just as strong. When I read it, I really get touched by it also. And I hope some in the Arabic public will also soon get to understand these depths, even though we in the Arabic lands have many strong poems and really touching descriptions. In Arabic is the language of poetry since the old times, so that's why maybe I also liked him and liked his ways of speaking, because it is really touching on something I know from my Arabic inheritance, that way of expressing yourself in depth and in dramatic words, using the nature and the culture and symbolism and all kind of what can you say, descriptions to explain what you are about to say. Making comparisons and using the colors and the wind and the weather and the mood of the person and a lot of things, even the animals around you. You use everything around you, everything you sense and see becomes part of what you want to use to express what you want to say in that story. And this is what he does here in his Danish way, of course. But since I also really get to the Danish depth, I really enjoy it very much. And the way he explains this poem is like by taking us along, saying that, well, this king is burning, and who is going to help him from the outside? There is these men who were left behind, Hjalte and Bjarke. And so they knew that even if it was Ragnarok, and even it was the furnace wolf who had been let loose. Now, he's imagining that even that in Nordic mythology there will be a day where Ragnarok, the last day, will come, and this furnace wolf will come and devour all people. This is a wolf that has been fed for centuries and centuries to come out and make an end of it all. And he's an evil. This is a very evil and scary creature. So he says, even though this wolf was on the loose, they would not abandon their duty and heroism. They will go and fight and help to the last man. And so Hjalte and Bjarke, they call the others together, and so they go and fight. And in that way, the Danish are not dead, even though they are fallen in many numbers and they have been betrayed, but they are never dead, as long as there is one man standing with this heroism in his heart and this spirit to the fight and to the defend and to remember and revenge. He will never lose. They will win again. And that's what Vigga's role has to become later in the original text. He's not really using him here, but he's mentioning that this is about getting back at Yartvar and in many ways waiting for the day and sunlight that's in it, because it has gold in its mouth. You will get what you want, and you will get back at your enemy and win things that has been lost. And here we can see a picture or a drawing from that time where Rolf and Bjarke and Hjalte are dead in the battle. It is from Frölich, who drew it in 1854, showing that, well, these people are fallen. This is part of the poem here that we are looking at. Very beautiful one, strong words. Vågne, vågne, danske helte, spring opp og spinne belte. Morgenstund har gull i munnen. So it's in a way strong, and you can almost feel the sense of that bouldering and thundering in the words themselves while you're speaking them and reading them aloud. And so to sum up, he's using the mythology of the North to awaken the spirit of the now, and he's using it as the picture of the mind that brings light to your history and background and what's important. And that's why he used this mythology in such kind of poetic way, explaining some of these origins, not as a philosophical explanation, not as a religious explanation, but more than a kind of picture in the mind of who you are, your history and your background, your feeling and fantasy has to work together to explain who you are without relating on it as a picture of the creation, because that's given by the God and the Christian faith in the Bible for Grundtvig. But he says, well, every people in different Christian areas or in different areas of the world, every people around has their own mythology and histories and myth and stories. And so what do they mean to their spirit and the way they see themselves? And where can we find that spirit that really brings them to life again, so they feel empowered by these stories once more? This is basically his project from this mythology, or it shifted to be his project from his young days, as everyone else got very, very much devoured by it. He really was into it as a whole, and felt that it took over his way of looking and thinking. And then he had Christianity and had the word of the God and how things are, and he could relate to that. And then he seems to have made like some kind of balancing again, so he could see one thing in one light and the other thing in another light, as if just to get the power from all that he had in his cultural chest, to bring the gold and bring the big words and the big feelings up in people, and bring their self-confidence back from where it has been lost in the ways that has been in his time. They have been losing, and the Danish is shrinking, and they are seeing themselves smaller than other nations. But he is here turning their attention, saying, oh no, we had a great and unique history, and we find it also in our mythology, and we have been brave, and we have taken over, and we have been those who have been on the track of light, so we can see that we will get that day tomorrow that has been lost for us today, and we will get that gold when the sun comes up next day. It has gold in its mouth. It's not just the rays of the sun. This is a new future and a new time, new tidings, and this is who we are. This is what he's saying, as I understand it from the reading here.